Alright, so the last operation that we're going to look at for polynomials is polynomial division, which is very tricky, so make sure you pay close attention. It's not hard, but it is tricky, and there's a couple of things you have to be careful about. And again, I'm going to show you two ways to divide polynomials, and for your practice problems, you can choose whichever way you like better. Okay, so the first way, we're going to start with one that is already somewhat familiar to you. It's long division. So if you recall back in elementary school, when you first learned to divide bigger numbers, you might have learned long division. So for example, on the left, if I asked you to divide 950 divided by 15, you would draw your long division symbol, and then we would put the 950 in here, right? And the 15 outside. The 15 is what we call the divisor. And what we're dividing is what we call the dividend. Okay, so I know you know how to do this, but I want you guys to go through the process with me because we're going to do the exact same thing to the long polynomial on the right. So the steps is very important. So the first thing we're going to do is say, okay, 15 cannot go into 9, so we're going to add the next digit. 15 goes into 95 how many times? And certainly you can check that with your calculator if you want. So it's going to give me 6 eventually. 15 times 6 gives me 90. Okay, and then we're going to subtract, right? 15 times 6 is 90, so we multiply the 15 and the 6, which gives me 90, and then we would subtract. So 95 minus 90 would give me a 5. And then what will we do next? We would bring down the next digit, which is 0. And then we would say, okay, 15 goes into 50 how many times? And the answer is 3. And then we multiply the 15 by the 3, right? 15 times 3 is 45. And then we subtract again. And we're left with 5 as our remainder. And from there, what we do with our remainder is, some of you might recall, well, we just add a decimal here, and we add another 0, and we keep bringing it down, and we keep dividing. But if you do that, you're going to get the same thing. If I bring down a 0, it'll be 50, and then it'll be 3, right? 15 times 3 will be 45, and when I subtract again, I would have another remainder. And so some of you might say, well, then my answer is 63.33333, which is correct. And 63.33 is just 63 and a third. And so once you get a remainder, what we can do with the remainder is we would write the remainder as a fraction over the divisor, 5 over 15, which gives us 63 and 1/3 when I simplify, and that's my answer. Okay, so I don't have to keep bringing down 0. Whatever my remainder is, all I have to do is write as a fraction over the divisor and simplify if I can, and that's my exact answer. 950 divided by 15 is 63 and a third. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing to the polynomial. We're going to start by writing my division symbol, and I'm going to put the divisor outside and the dividend inside. So because my divisor has 2 terms, I'm going to just focus on these 2 terms first. And the first thing we're going to do is think about, okay, I want to do the same thing as I did here. I want to multiply x minus 5 by something so that I can subtract away at least this x squared when I subtract. So think about x times what will give me x squared, so I can subtract it away. And your answer would be x. Okay, another way to think about it is just to divide. X squared divided by x is what? And that's just x. So x squared divided by x is x. And then once we have that, we're going to multiply the x minus 5 to the x. So x times x is x squared. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. And then just like before, we're going to subtract. But because we're subtracting more than one term, we're going to change all their signs. So I'm going to subtract x squared. I'm going to subtract 5x, which makes it positive. Okay, so then that's going to give me x squared minus x squared subtracts away. 3x and 5x is going to give me 8x. And then we bring down the next term, just like what I did on the left. And then I divide again. 8x divided by x, this is what I'm looking at. 8x divided by x is just 8. So positive 8. Okay, and then I multiply. So you're really following 3 steps. Divide, multiply, and subtract. BMS. So 8 times x is 8x. That will allow me to subtract away that 8x. And then 8 times 5, negative, would be negative 40. And then I subtract again. So minus 8x minus negative 40, which will turn it into a plus. And this subtracts away. Negative 42 plus 40 is negative 2. Right, and I have a remainder of negative 2, so it's going to be plus, add one more term, that would be the remainder, negative 2, over my divisor, which is x minus 5. So whatever your remainder is, write it as a fraction over your divisor, and that's your final answer. Okay, let's do one more. Now, what if I asked you to write 2019 divided by 6. If I asked you to write 2019, you would write it as 2, not 219, right? You would write it as 2019 divided by 6. And we're not actually going to do that, but I just want you to note that what is this purpose of putting that 0 there? Because I don't have a number for the hundredths place, so we put the 0 there as a placeholder, right? And that's the job of that 0 in 2019 as a placeholder. And so sometimes we need to put a placeholder if there is a missing term in between that doesn't have a value. And so if we look at the next problem on the right, x cubed plus x minus 10, divided by x minus 2, I'm going to go ahead and put it into the division symbol. X minus 2 is my divisor. And now for my dividend, I have x cubed, that's what I'm starting with. And then the next term in descending order should be x squared, right? But I don't have an x squared term. So what I'm going to do is put a placeholder there, plus 0x squared as a placeholder. And then I'm going to keep going, plus x to the first power, which I have a term, minus my constant. So every single term has a spot, x cubed, x squared, x to the 0 power. Okay, so if there's a term that is missing in between, you got to put a placeholder. And then we're going to do the same thing. So x cubed, I want to start with x cubed, divided by x is what? That would give us x squared. And I'm going to put that on top of the x squared column in the right spot. And then we multiply, right? Divide, multiply, and subtract. So when I multiply, I have x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times negative 2 is negative 2x squared. And then we subtract. Right, so change all the signs. Minus x cubed minus negative 2x squared, so that would make it a plus. X cubes cancel out when I subtract. And I have positive 2x squared. 0x squared plus 2x squared is positive 2x squared. And then I bring down my next term. And I do the same thing all over again. 2x squared divided by x is going to give me 2x. And then I multiply. 2x times x is 2x squared. That will allow me to subtract it away, which is what I want. 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. And we subtract. Minus 2x squared minus negative 4x, which will make it positive. 2x squared subtract away. 1x plus 4x is 5x. and then bring it down one last time. Bring down the negative 10 and divide one last time. 5x divided by x, 5x divided by x is 5. And then we're going to multiply. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. And when I subtract, we're going to minus the 5x and minus the negative 10, which turns it positive. And I have a remainder of 0. Okay, no remainder, so I don't have to write it as a fraction over the divisor. And my final answer is just x squared plus 2x plus 5. So when you're doing long division, you follow the 3 steps: divide, multiply, and then subtract. Bring down the next term and do the exact same thing. Divide, multiply, subtract. I'm going to show you another way to divide, a little shortcut that you might like better. Okay, and it's something called synthetic division. So this is the exact same problem that we did earlier. We're going to do it using a different method called synthetic division, and we're going to see if we get the same exact answer, which we should. Okay, synthetic division is very easy. It's different, so you might think it's not as easy at the beginning, but it's actually much easier for you to organize your work. So for synthetic division, which only works, by the way, if you're dividing by a binomial, x plus a number, x minus a number. What we're going to do is we're going to draw a half open box that looks like this. And outside the box is going to be a number, and that number I get by taking my divisor and setting it equal to 0 and solving. So x minus 2 equals 0. Solve for x. X would be 2. This 2 I'm going to put on the outside. So that's my 0. Okay, take your divisor, set it equal to 0, and solve. That's the number that goes on the outside. Now what goes on the inside are the coefficients for my dividend. My coefficients. So 1x cubed, 1 is my coefficient. 0x squared, don't forget the placeholder. I'm going to put 0 as a placeholder for the x squared term. And then 1x, so 1 is my coefficient, and negative 10. So just all the numbers in front of the variables. Okay, and remembering to put a placeholder regardless of which method you use if that's necessary. All right, coefficients. 1 for the x cubed term, 0 for the x squared, 1 for the x, and negative 10 for the constant. So once everything is in place, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring down the first number, 1. We're going to take that number and multiply it by the number on the outside. 1 times 2 is 2. And then we're going to add the 2 to the 0, which is 2. Okay, and then this 2, I'm going to multiply to the outside number again. 2 times 2 is 4. Put it in the next column. Add the 4 to the 1. That gives me 5. Any number you bring down, you always multiply to the outside number. 5 times 2 is 10. And then we add it to the next column. 10 plus negative 10 is 0. And this last number is our remainder. Okay, so if your last number is your remainder, then we move backwards. This is my constant. This is the coefficient for my x term. And this is my coefficient for the x squared term. So my final answer is 1x squared plus 2x plus 5. And then the 0 is my remainder. And this is the exact same answer that I got before when I did long division, but much quicker, right? Let's try one last one using synthetic division to get you familiar with it. So here is my box that I'm going to draw. Again, here is my divisor. So set it equal to 0, add 2 to both sides. X equals 2. 2 is the number I'm putting on the outside. My coefficients, I'm going to start with 1 for the x cubed, 5 for the x squared, negative 7 for the x, and positive 2 for my constant. And it looks like I don't need any 0 for placeholders because all my terms are there, right? There's no missing terms. And so let's do the same thing. start by bringing down my 1. And then I'm going to take any number that I bring down and multiply to the outside number until I get to the end. So 1 times 2 is 2. Put that in the next column. Plus 5 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 plus negative 7 is positive 7. And then we're going to take that and we're going to times 2 again. So take the 7 times 2 and I have 14. And then add it and we have 16. And then this is it. We don't have any other columns. So this is it. And the 16 is our remainder. So always last number is your remainder. And then the number right before that is your constant. And then your x and then your x squared. Alright, so writing this final answer out, once you divide using synthetic division, you still have to write out your answers with your variables. So 1x squared plus 7x plus 7, and then my remainder, I'm going to add it as an extra term as a fraction, 16 over my divisor, which is x minus 2. And that's our final answer, if we have a remainder. So for your practice problems, up to you which method you want to use, either long division or synthetic division to divide. Regardless of which one, remember to check to see if you have to put in a placeholder and show all your work. All right? For most of you, I would recommend using synthetic division. That might be easier to organize.